welcome to to Running Tales. It's Craig Lewis here. We are having quite the time of it. For those who might not have watched our little previous attempt, it's myself and Jason Bahamundi here. My phone, I'm in the UK, one of the coldest places on the planet outside of the North Pole or something like that anyway. But we're having such a heat wave here that the heat has just clamped my phone down and kicked us out of Subset Live. So I'm now sitting outside in a field, hoping it's slightly cooler, and we're going to give it another go. So fingers crossed. Jason, introduce yourself and tell everyone about everything you do, and let's hope this all goes to plan.
The irony that I am in Phoenix, Arizona, in one of the hottest places on the planet, and I don't have any issues with the technology at this point is beyond ironic. Anyway, my name is Jason Bahamundi, as Craig said. I am the founder of Run, Try, Bike and the creator of The Everyday Athlete. We are a content creation platform that tells stories of the everyday athlete, whether that athlete is BIPOC, queer, disabled, female. Everybody has a story to tell, and we want to be the platform that tells it. And so when I talk to athletes, I want to hear the hard parts. I don't want it to all be glorified, right, Craig? Like we run and it's hard, man. Like running is hard. It's difficult some days to get out the door. Some days when you're out the door, the run is hard. Like this stuff is hard, and we shouldn't sugarcoat that because we want to bring more people into the sport. And if we sugarcoat it and make everything seem like it's all unicorns and rainbows, and when they hit their hard part, they're going to quit. They're going to be like, oh, no, Jason said it was so easy. You just go run 15 miles today. And it's like, no, man, this stuff is hard. And so I want to make sure that we're being authentic and honest and true. We're actually talking about burnout on our platform for the past 60 or 90 days because, you know, there's a good chance you're going to go through it at some point if you stay long enough in this sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when, as you say, we're talking about those everyday athletes who are, they're not doing this as a professional thing. And I don't want to suggest that elite athletes have it easy because they certainly don't. But when you're working a 9 to 5, when you've got a family, all of these other responsibilities and so on, fitting in that vital training, whether you're running a 5K or whether you're running a marathon, it's not easy, is it?
No, and here's the funny thing, right? So we're content creators, you're a content creator. Like I have to convince myself sometimes that when I'm going out for a run, it's work, right? Like, because we're trying to get brand partnerships. Like this is work, dude. Like you have, and lean into that because other times it's like, I need to go back to the office and do whatever I need to do to send out a cold email. And so you're balancing all of that stuff around, again, a sport that is hard. It's not to say that it's not rewarding because it absolutely is rewarding, but it's not easy. I often ask a question on our fireside chat, right? Why choose the hard thing when you could have done book club? You could have played chess. That doesn't involve like the physical demands that running has, but you chose this stuff. Like why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. And I guess the other thing that is hard, and sometimes we don't admit it, is creating content and trying to create original content around running. Is how hard is that? Because I do this as a bit of a side project. For you, this is what you do.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but one of the things so I don't know if you know who Josh Rosenthal is. He is the founder of Borderlands. And I talked to Josh a few years ago and I asked him, so what do you listen to? Who do you read? And he said something to me that has stuck with me since then. And he said, I don't actually listen to other running podcasts for the most part, because if I hear what they're saying and who they're talking to, then I'll want to do what they're doing because I'll be influenced by it instead of doing what I want to do. And so I've taken that to heart where if I start consuming tons and tons and tons of running content, I'm going to end up making their running content or that running content, and it's not going to be what I want to do. And so it's going to feel sort of hollow. And so I just think about like what makes me laugh, what makes me smile, what makes me cry, right? What gets me down when running isn't lifting me up, and that I use as my content creator compass. Right? Follow the thing that is making me happy. That's not to say I don't see other people's posts and I don't engage with other people, because I do. I comment on as many things as I possibly can. But I try to silo that into That's content I consumed, and here's content I'm going to create.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I'm always kind of looking at with Running Tales is, our basic strap line is to try and tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. But sometimes you get somebody who's slightly more elite and you sort of still want to tell their story. And then sometimes you might have the best will in the world. This is going to sound dreadful probably, but somebody who is a perfectly average runner, which is what we're looking for, but doesn't necessarily have any story beyond they go out and run. And you still want to tell that, but you sort of think, oh gosh, I need a hook there. How do you sort of balance all of that? Because I'm not sure I found the answer yet.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, so we want to talk to the elites to some extent, and I've had people reach out, right, and they'll say, "Hey, I want to talk. I want to come on your podcast," and I preface it right away. Look, I don't care how fast you ran. I don't care how far you ran. I want to
Yeah.
know what motivated you to run. I want to know what kept you going. I want to know what the challenge that you overcame was, and I don't want to talk about how fast you ran or whatever else, because that doesn't resonate with our audience. On the other spectrum, when you have the average athlete, the everyday athlete, I find that their story is unique. And oftentimes they're not willing to lean into it at the outset. But when I start to take down my guard in a way and start to show who I am and lean into that part of the story, they dive into it themselves. And then all of a sudden that story starts rolling. And we start hearing about how they get up at 4 a.m. or how they get up at 5 a.m. or how they're running at 9 p.m. or how they're running at 10 p.m. And I think that's what happens is we as the hosts sometimes have to take down our guard and tell our story so that they can lean in and start telling their story. And then all of a sudden that average runner who's running 10, 11, 12-minute mile, running 5K, hasn't run a marathon yet, let's say, not that that's the end all be all, but they're in that space where they're just getting started. When we take down our guard and show who we are, they it's like permission. That's the best word I could come up with. It's like permission for them to go, oh shit, I can tell more about who I am and the things that I do. And all of a sudden their story starts to perk up. And I think that's our job as podcast hosts is to let the invitee, the person that we're talking to feel comfortable in the chair, right? Because not everybody is going to be an extrovert and be like, oh man, I'll just tell everything about my life and that's okay. People are going to be protective because they're worried that somebody on the internet's going to say something stupid about them.
Yeah, and much like we do on Running Tales, your stories sometimes involve sensitive subjects, don't they? It's not always dead simple. So that makes it's a real challenge sometimes, I find, as a podcast host, when you're speaking to somebody and you want to speak to them because perhaps they have had mental health problems in the past or addiction problems in the past, and you want that to be part of the podcast because it's frankly interesting. It has editorial value, to use a horrible phrase, but equally, you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable, do you?
But I think that's where we have to be open with our guests, right? Like I talk about my disordered eating, I talk about my alcohol abuse problems, I talk about having been burned out. I think that if we as the host lean into that and tell those stories, then they will open up too, right? Like I know a year or two ago, right? You had an issue with your basement, you were remodeling it or something like that. And so you had stress in your life. And so
Yeah.
if you're talking to somebody and you can start to talk about the stress of dealing with the house stuff, that's something that people can relate to, not just the person you're talking to, but then also the audience. And all of a sudden they start leaning into Craig and they're like, oh, he's just like me. He just happens to host a podcast and I don't.
Yeah, don't remind me of the basement stuff. I wish, Jason, it had just been remodeling. The whole thing flooded about 3 times and had to be basically rebuilt. But
I tried to make it a little bit easier and brighter for you, I guess.
yeah, that's right. Well, on a sunny day like this in the UK, you kind of forget about rain flooding into your basement, but it's always
Yeah,
there in the background. But actually, that speaks to what you're saying, isn't it? It's like everybody has these external pressures, and kind of being open about them helps other people to open up about their own issues and their own pressures. And some people's are obviously a lot more serious than a bit of flooding,
right.
which headache at the time, but you get over it, don't you?
I think the for me, right? I have a fireside chat show, which it tends to be somewhat serious, but then we have humor mixed into that, where we're laughing, doing food conversations at the end. And then we have Enduring Minds, where we are talking about mental health. And for me, it creates a great outlet, right? I can be who I am on this side of the aisle on this one show, and then I can be who I am on this side of the aisle on this other type of show. And then we have the What's in Your Earbuds, which is just a full on mess of a show where we start talking about music and we end up talking about food and running and graffiti and whoever knows what else. And I think people get to know us as hosts in that manner. And so then they can relate to us when we put out a piece of content that isn't a video or audio, right? So like for Running Tales, if you put up a carousel, let's say that's of you doing a run, a park run, let's say, or a trail run, if they've already know who Craig is from the prior posts or episodes, because he's talked about the flooding and he's talked about whatever it might be, marriage or family or whatever, all of a sudden then they can see themselves as Craig while he's at park run, or Craig while he's on a trail race or something of that manner. And then that connects people to each other, and it takes away, for me, the whole idea of follower count, because we can now start having conversations with each other that minimize this idea that you have to have 15, 20, 50,000 followers, which I don't believe is true at all. And we can talk about the business part of running, because I've developed something for our business that has allowed me to have conversations with brands that essentially removes follower count from the entire conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually, because it was something I was going to come on to in terms of when you're starting out as a smaller content creator, a smaller podcast, you're beginning from nothing, you're not Marathon Talk, or you don't have the power of some of these bigger organizations which are now increasingly coming into the running world. It can be quite hard to have that instant, well, one, gratification, but two, I suppose, boost of getting those hits and getting those viewer figures that are they're going to propel you up the podcast charts, get your hits, and potentially get your brand sponsorships and so on.
Yeah, like, so my wife Lori, she's part of a mastermind group, and I hear the conversations. It's a webinar. I hear the conversations every now and again. And one piece that stuck with me, and this is for all of you content creators who are just getting started, because to Greg's point, like I struggled at first. I was like, why don't we have more followers? Why don't we have more of this? Why don't we have more of that? And then eventually I found my foothold. But the one thing that they said in this mastermind class about social was, instead of saying, let's say you get 100 downloads on an episode, instead of saying and worrying that, man, I only got 100 downloads of that episode, you turn that conversation around and you say, there were 100 people who gave me their time to listen to my conversation. And once you start doing that, you start seeing things in a much different manner. You start thinking to yourself as, somebody gave up their time to hear me talk, or watch me if it's on YouTube or this live, to hear me talk and have a conversation. It really does change how you perceive everything, because all of a sudden you don't have to be like, for me, let me rephrase. For me, I felt like as a podcast host, I had to do everything perfect. My intro had to be perfect. The question had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect. And then when I started to realize, like, it doesn't have to be perfect, it has to be entertaining. I put that in air quotes, because people are giving me of their time. Like it totally turned the conversation in my own head into what we can now be talking about and how we talk about. Like, obviously I talk with my hands a lot. That's just New York City in me. And like, we do that stuff, and that's how we get it across. And we do those kinds of conversations. And I think that makes a big difference for content creators, especially when you're just getting started. Because when you're just getting started, it's hard, dude, right? Like, you get like 2 or 3 downloads and you're like, should I continue?
Oh, it's that funny moment, isn't it? Week 1, you're actually quite pleased with 2 or 3 downloads. It's like, somebody is listening to this. I thought it'd be 0. And then maybe when you're still on that after week 4, it gets a bit depressing, but it does slowly work its way up.
And I know you've done the research too, right? Where it's like, what is it, the numbers? Like after 2 episodes, like 95% of podcasters stop recording, right? So if you could just get to episode 3 in full confidence, right, you've got a great chance of being successful in some fashion, in some form of measurement.
Yeah, yeah, and we ought to say hello to Adam, who's giving us all the praise in the world here. So thank you, Adam. What an absolute legend who obviously shares a seat with you on. Oh, I've forgotten the name of your.
We haven't done it in a while. That's why Food Fight
Yeah,
Friday. It's
Food Fight
been
Friday, of
ages.
course. Yeah, yeah.
But so we just talked about the business of content creation and everything else. I saw Adam put up a Substack. I haven't read it yet, where he's developing his own dashboard and his own KPI for what measurements of success he is looking for out of community trail running. And I mentioned that I have done that for myself for the everyday athlete too. And I think that has been a way for myself, and I'm sure for Adam, to kind of level set conversations with people. Like I have had conversations with brands who have told me, you guys are too small. We can't do business with you because you have less than 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, whatever the number is. And I get into the conversation with them about engagement and how we have so many more conversations than others. And I show them this KPI that I built, and it'll show that we on the everyday athlete side of it have more conversations per 1,000 views than somebody who has like 145,000 followers.
Yeah.
And that has changed the conversation for us as well.
Well, there's this, almost these vanity metrics that you particularly get on platforms like Instagram, where it's like, oh, I don't know, 700 likes on this or something, and I've got 7 million followers. But actually, most of those people are only a tiny percentage are actually clicking the link to view your article. So yeah, we're both on Instagram. Of course, we are kind of mad not to be there, but really, it drives very little actual genuine traffic, because you can look fantastic on those places, but most people leave a video after 2 seconds. So what I value is perhaps the let's be generous, the 100 people who might read one of my articles here on Substack, because hopefully they're reading it 90%, if not all of the way through. And I know that that's much the same as you're thinking with what you're producing.
Yeah, like we put up a post last week that got 4.5, 5x on the average views that we normally get, but the comments per 100,000 were 1/5 of what we normally get, right?
Yeah.
So it's great that it went into the ethos and 4x saw it, but nobody had it. Nobody talked, right? Nobody said, "Oh, I can't wait to do X," or "I want to do Y," or "Tell me more," or anything like that. Yet a post that we put up the next day skyrocketed in terms of the comments per 1,000 views, even though again it had 20% of the views of the previous post. And for me, there is value in those conversations, because that is where we are building trust. That is where people are getting to know who I am as the founder of this platform, but then also Santino and Joe and Lori, and being able to say, that's the community I want to be a part of. And to me, there's so much value in that.
Yeah, and community is a really big word of it, and word within it all, isn't it? What we have the advantage of, I think, as smaller content creators, broadcasters, whatever we want to call ourselves, is that we really have the ability to try and build those communities a bit better than some of the massive corporates do, because they're just not set up for it. Even thinking about the BBC, say over here, I don't know, CNN, whoever. Yeah, they're massive. I'm sure they've got huge reach and loads of people watching it. But sometimes I'm not saying our communities are bigger than them, but I would reckon than theirs. But I would guess that the people who view regularly are a lot more engaged.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Here's a question I'll ask you is, when you think about success, does it ever worry you? So, for example, one day you log on and Substack's at 50,000 subscribers or 100,000 subscribers. Do you ever think about what that looks like and how you'll react to that?
I think for me, I'm still at the stage where I'd like to get big enough to make this be something where I am where you are now. It's something that I'm doing more regularly. But yeah, when you reach that number where you think, I no longer know who, not necessarily all of these people are, but a good percentage of these people are, and you think, oh, this is an audience who are consuming my content, but are they fully engaged with my content? Do they still know who I am? Yeah, I guess that's the worry when you start to reach huge figures. But between me and you, it's not a problem that worries me too much at the moment, because I'm not really anywhere near there, if I'm perfectly honest.
Like I think about it a lot because I do reply to every comment. I do engage with people, and we're just shy of 5,000 followers on Instagram. That if and people have said once you hit the 5,000 mark, it's like this exponential growth. All of a sudden, you're at 10,000 before you know it.
Yeah,
And I do worry because the people that are coming to the community I believe have an expectation of engaging with me in the community. And so I think about that a lot. Like, what's it look like? Do you start to hire people to post, from their account, but as part of the community on your behalf? You know what I'm saying? So like, um, Santino or Joe or Lori or somebody else commenting from our platform, but putting their name to it. It
mm,
to me is really what it would have to be. It would have to be something like, "Hey, Craig, thanks for your comment. Have you ever considered eating apple pie with a spoon? John," right? Like John wrote that post so that you know who you're engaging with. Because like I love the Beyond Meat account, but the Beyond Meat account might have 1,000 employees. Like I have no idea who that person is, right?
yeah.
And they've built that, and that's okay. But for us, we've built everything on community and engagement and conversation and almost one to one. That it worries me that if it gets to that level, like how do you then handle and manage that? Because I don't want to lose that connection.
But I love the way you're thinking about it in terms of, oh, I'm not just going to hire somebody in from outside to take care of that, or someone to just put holding comments, or whether it's like, if I can't comment, it'll be Joe or Laurie or Santino, who are all people who already who your audience, your community knows and connects with. So yeah, they might not be getting Jason every time, but they're still getting the community. They're still getting what
Yeah.
you produce. And I guess the other thing I'd say is that. When it goes back to what you were saying earlier, when they're communicating with you, it's not always directly through those messages on Instagram or wherever it's out. It's through you being on your podcast, telling your story, like you were talking
Yeah.
about earlier, being authentic. So yeah, okay, I didn't get a reply from Jason, but Jason is still there communicating directly with me through everything he produces.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I was thinking about that earlier today too, where right, somebody might pick up a podcast and hear me or watch it on YouTube, let's say, and then they get a newsletter, although I've been very slack in sending those out. They might get a newsletter one day. But they're getting my words and my voice, and they're hearing me and they're seeing me. And so that kind of fills a void where it's not just on Instagram or on Threads for that matter. It's in multiple places where people can have a conversation. I was going to ask you, do you use Threads very much, or are you predominantly in Substack?
Oh, I'm not in Threads at all now, so I'm pretty much in Substack. I've kind of tried to take away a bit of social media. Facebook, frankly, was driving me around the bend. Aside from the fact that it's really hard, for me at least, to get any engagement or any reaction on there, I've never really liked the platform. Sorry,
Yeah,
Mark Zuckerberg. And I've been thinking for ages of kind of just getting off there, and I basically have now. So I've paired my own personal account, taken
yeah,
everybody off there apart from like my mum and Michelle. And literally, what I'll do every now and again is post to one or two running groups that I value
yeah,
to tell them what's going on. So I don't really use Facebook anymore. As you know, we're on Instagram. I'm not on Threads. X got canned a long time ago due to a certain American
yeah.
billionaire, and so Substack is where we mainly are now in terms of the socials. It's like it's sort of different ways of thinking about it. Sometimes you desperately feel that you need to be everywhere. You should be on, I don't know, TikTok as well, or whatever the latest thing is. But hi, Andrew. Yeah. Sometimes you're not quite sure whether you're doing the wrong thing by getting off there. But I think it comes back again to, I kind of know where the audience I want to talk to is, so
And it's
that's
time.
that's where I am.
It's how much time you have too. So like we have an X account, never post there anymore. Our Facebook account is there, but that's just carrying over from Instagram. Like We have whittled it down to basically Instagram Threads, the podcast, obviously, but then YouTube. And that's pretty much been it. Like, we've been able to refine who we are and keep finding how can we be better in the content that we're producing and the conversations that we're having by whittling down the distribution points, but expanding within the distribution points that we're using, right? Like I have a Substack account here. I tried writing every now and again, and I don't have the time to do it. And I always think to myself, well, if you're listening to me on a podcast or you're watching it on YouTube, seeing it in the written word just feels like I'm duplicating more and more content. And maybe that's the right thing to do, is to just carry that over. But I just know I just cannot do that. And it's why you also see that I haven't sent out a newsletter in probably 2 months, because we're using these other, let me rephrase this. I decided I wanted to focus on how do I get better at Instagram. And so once I got better at Instagram, I started asking myself, how do I get better at YouTube? And as I get better at YouTube, I'm going to ask, how do I get better at the newsletter, right? So it's coming in stages where we're refining our efficiencies and how do we produce content, and how do we post content, and how do we engage with content by being focused in one spot and then moving to the next. Because once I'm really good at this, it becomes a well-oiled machine, right? Until Zuckerberg or Mosseri is like, oh, we're changing the algorithm again. And you're like, man, I got to start all over. But like, that's why I asked you that question, is like, how can we get better if we're trying to be good at everything instead of being better at the thing, and then being better at the thing, and then being better at the thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, which is, I suppose that's why I just thought I'm going to try and concentrate on 2 or 3 platforms and just get them right rather than being everywhere. And actually, YouTube is the one that I missed out when I was talking earlier. So it is mainly, entirely Substack, YouTube, and Instagram these days for Running Tales. And I don't feel like, well, I know for a fact that we've not lost any audience as a result of that. So it works quite well. And as Adam says there, Substack, you own the email list. There's no algorithm. It's very easy to find people and make sure they're getting exactly what you send them.
Yeah. Adam, are you trying to get me on Substack again? I haven't even been able to schedule a phone call with you. And now you want me to do another platform.
I would say it's worth putting the Everyday Athlete podcast on Substack, because you can do that without even having, that can be automated. So it can just happen without you having to do anything else. So I've only recently started doing that with Running Tales. It's worked really well. It means that our podcast gets sent out on an email newsletter list without really doing much else. In fact, doing nothing else apart from hitting the send button.
We may have to have an offline conversation, because thank you, brother. I was about to put EAPN on Substack, and then it was like, you have to transfer all of the stuff to Substack, and I was like, X out. Like, I've already got it set up the way I want it set up. Like, I don't want to start moving things around. So if you have a cheat sheet on how you did that, please send it over.
Yeah, I have to remember exactly how I did it, but yeah, Substack. I think if I'm getting this right, and if anyone's listening and I'm not, then comment or let Jason and I know. I've obviously managed to do it somehow, but then, like everything else, I instantly forget. But yeah, Substack gives you sort of the 2 options, which is, one is migrating everything over to them, and the other one is almost just like you push your feed into it. Yeah. So I'll have a look and I'll definitely let you know.
I'll go back to it, because Threads has that too. You can put your podcast from Spotify in your bio on Threads, which is a nice little feature that they have there. And it was simply just connect your Threads account to your Spotify account, and the podcast shows up there all the time now. So that was an easy feature there. It does not say that the new episode drops out, which is what Substack does, right? It'll send an email that says new episode for X, Y, and Z is available now, kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, look, Jason, before I move on and we probably bring this to a close, because I've literally put no time on this. I've probably taken up far too much time in your schedule with all our stopping and starting before we even began.
All good.
But I wanted to ask you how your own running is going these days, because one thing I hear from a lot of people who get into this content creation game is they start running out of time to do their own exercise and their own running.
Well, I will say this, the Run Club tour that we launched this year has been so beneficial in staying in the running because we just got back from the San Francisco Marathon. So right now I'm in recovery mode, but we did just get back from the San Francisco Marathon, and in about 6 or 7 weeks we're heading up to Seattle. So if I want to show up to these events and not be hurting, I better keep running. So it's been we moved to Phoenix at the end of June, beginning of July. The apartment complex we are in has a fantastic gym. So when it's 105 degrees in Phoenix, I can hit the treadmill here and get my miles in, which has been fantastic. Again, because we are in Phoenix, I can find an outdoor pool, which will help with my running and VO2 max capacity. So I will be joining an outdoor pool here real soon. And then it's just like everything else, dude. Like you have to cut out time to make sure that you get your podcasts up, you do your interviews, you edit, you post, and all that stuff. It's a matter of making it a priority and putting it on the calendar so that people can't block. That's one of the things I've learned. Like I used to send out my Calendly link before putting like blocks in there, and then somebody would inevitably schedule a time there. And so now I go in and every Sunday evening I go in and I block out my times. And then if somebody says, "Hey, can we talk?" I'm like, "Yeah, here's my Calendly link," and it's already blocked out, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good, and getting that schedule sorted for yourself. It's so important, isn't it? You talked about burnout earlier. I'm happy to admit that I've had plenty of burnout recently, and one thing I've been told to get around it is make sure you're scheduling properly. You're not just throwing everything at the wall on every day and going, "Oh my word, how on earth am I going to get through this day?" Which is frankly where I've probably been for the last 3 or 4 months with all sorts of things. So yeah, it is really hard, and sometimes running can become a secondary thing, and we got to kind of remember to keep it front and center, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think if you lean into learning from the stuff that you've done. So we're doing 6 races in 7 months for this year's 2026 Run Club tour. And as we were driving back from San Francisco, we started talking about for 2027, and it was like, look, I don't want to do that. Like it feels like we're constantly on the road, we're doing stuff like that. So if we can go every 7 or 8 weeks, start earlier in the year, finish later in the year, and you can still get 4 to 5 destinations in, but they're spread out a little bit more. That will allow us to also avoid burnout as we're going through finding different races and stuff like that. And it's just learning from the things that you've done, even with the applause that we've gotten for our San Francisco Marathon content. It would be easy to say, let's just keep doing that and just keep doing. And it's like, well, no, like I want to, like, let's enjoy it a little bit more and do other things. People will still show up for that content, even if they don't get it every month. They'll get it every 6 or 8 weeks, and they'll still love it, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I tell you what, Jason, we need to get America a little bit closer to the UK somehow, so I can get myself over there and join in one of these Run Club events. Or I'm always seeing the events that Joe is now starting to put on, and I'm very jealous that I can't get over there. Although I don't think Michelle will let us go to America at the moment for various political reasons that we won't.
She's a smart woman. I wouldn't either.
Yeah. we won't go there though, people. If you know, you know.
Exactly. I will say that when we were in Europe this summer or this spring, I guess, like we were in London and I had a ball in London. We went to Paris and I fell in love with Paris. So like Paris Marathon has moved up the list of races to do. So we might be on your side of the pond before you know it as well.
Oh, you have to let us know. We'll have to come over. I've never done Paris, so good Lord, a big beautiful bridge. Yeah, I'll have to join you in Paris. Michelle's done it, but I haven't. So we'll have to do that.
We'll absolutely have to put that on the list of places, of things to do. For me, I loved it. I had a great time in Paris, and so it is definitely on the list of must-do events. And Tour de Gente is still on there. Adam, you're the trail runner. Come join me in Italy. We can go visit all the little small towns in Italy and eat pizza along the way. I think it's a 204-mile race, I think, is the distance. So we'll have plenty of time to eat pizza. You can join me in the Tour de Gente, Adam.
Once he's walked over that bridge, it won't be too much further to go. Jason, I know what you and I are like. We could talk all day, but I guess we better bring this to a close because we've both got other things to get on. I'm glad it worked in the end. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but they are definitely part of what we do as smaller scale content creators, shall I say. And I massively appreciate your time as ever.
This was a blast. If the analytics say have that guy on again, by all means, let me know. I'm happy to join you.
We'll make it a weekly thing or something.
I'm in. Sign me up.
Good man. I'll be in touch soon and let you know about how to get the podcast on and just chat generally. But Jason, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you soon.
See you. Thanks, Craig.
Bye.